All right, we are live. We are the Artcasters, and we've come for you. I'm just kidding. So, as usual, we'll just kind of make the rounds and introduce everybody. I'm excited about our guest today, and it's pretty exciting, actually. I think it'll be a good episode. All right, so you're on my channel. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell. That way you get notifications when we're about to go live. And today I'm just going to promote one book, which is, obviously my other book, Two Stories, autobiographical comic that talks about depression and dealing with growing up and seeing the hypocrisy in a Christian school and all sorts of fun stuff like that. That's available on Amazon as usual. But right now I'm going to ask that you guys go to your local bookstore or your local library and ask that they carry this book, Jacob's Apartment. It's basically the story about the types of questions that can shake even the strongest of faith. And this particular story is the mood and tone of it is like if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind, you put it in a blender with Ghost World. If you like the flavor of that, indie comics, nice, hefty graphic novel, doomed romance for your reading enjoyment, you should go request that your local library or bookstore carry this. And that actually has weight when you guys do that. That actually supports indie comics. So get out there and make that happen. Okay. And then some person said, sir, are you doing a separate stream or was it put on by accident?
It was put on by accident. I thought I canceled it, but I don't know if some person, can you let us know if you're coming from the newsletter? Because I don't know. Now I'm wondering which link I put in the newsletter, if I put yours or the one that I set up. We had a little confusion before the show started. So yeah, that one was on accident. So it might take a while for people to filter in here.
Just because I have a little boy, I'm going to be like quoting Sir Topham Hatt and be like, Scott, you have caused confusion and delay. He said so not the newsletter. It's on YouTube. Okay.
Well, I thought I canceled it. Oh, okay. Hold on. I'll try to figure this out because I didn't realize that. Okay. Hold on.
Okay. So while Scott is figuring that out, I'll just take that time to basically once again say buy this book and ask people to pre-order it. Should we? You know what, Scott? We'll get to you after our guest. That way, it gives you time to do the YouTube stuff. Okay, right. So our special guest tonight is Doug Knight of Cross-Eye Comics. Doug, before we get into the topic, why don't you let people know where they can find your work and check out your stuff and support what you do?
Sure. So Instagram is the all access hub for my art and goings on. At Cross-Eye Comics, there's no D in there. Everybody always goes cross-eyed, but Cross-Eye Comics. I do have a website, crosseyecomics.com. But basically everything is diverting people towards my Kickstarter, which is currently active.
There's a link below too. So if that's too long for you guys, yeah. There's a link below in the notes. Yeah.
Oh, in the description. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So there you go. So that's it. So basically Kickstarter is where I'm sending everybody right now. Otherwise the Cross-Eye Comics Instagram. Because I'm always updating it.
Awesome. All right. Scott, did you get the YouTube stuff sorted?
Okay. I'm getting ready to delete it. Okay. All right, it's been deleted. All right.
Oh, I love it. Okay. So Scott, before we get into the topic, where can everybody find your work and follow your stuff and all that fun stuff?
You can find me on the television show Hoarders, because now I'm a hoarder. I just started taking up this hobby, as you can see behind me. No, actually, we just had new carpet installed, so that's why all this mess is back here. We haven't put everything back yet. But the other place you can find me is on my website, circworks.com. I got tons of cool products and tools, digital tools and things to help you create comics. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, where you'll find Making Comics 101, which is my series on how to make comics. It takes you step by step, every step of the process, from coming up with your ideas all the way to printing, publishing, and all of that stuff, everything in between. And I have a Kickstarter coming up next week, but that's not up yet. I just want to let you know that it's coming. But since that isn't up, just go and check out Doug's Kickstarter, and we'll be talking a little bit about his book and everything. So why don't we dive into that? I was kind of preoccupied trying to figure that out. Did we talk a little bit about what your book's about, Doug?
No, I don't think we've dove into that yet.
Okay, let's find out, because I'm curious.
Sure. So the quick spiel is it's a sci-fi retelling of my life as a childhood cancer survivor. But you swap out chemotherapy with an alien molecule, and see what happens. Awesome.
That sounds interesting. So I guess you've kind of put it out there. So you definitely have an interesting story. So I'd like to kind of dive into that a little bit, as much as
sure.
I assume you're open to talking about it, because
absolutely
you're writing books about it and everything. You are, however, the second legally blind guest we've had, I think, on the show. A while back, we had Richard. Is it Fairgray?
Fairgray, yeah.
Fairgray, yeah. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but
no, I'm not.
It's another interesting story. So, but
cool.
I don't know, Doug. You want to kind of dive into kind of how I guess what happened and how that kind of inspired. I don't know if that was the catalyst that inspired you to do art, or if you've always been interested in art and you just had to learn to adapt, but curious. So
yeah, I think that's the best way to put it, man.
Yeah.
So my brain tumor atrophied my optic nerves. Just means that it broke pieces off. So the image that I get through my eyeballs is disrupted, and by the time it gets to my brain, there's pieces missing. So I do a lot of filling in the blanks. My eyes are always kind of like adjusting and auto-focusing as your camera would, to try to figure out, what's there, what's not there. So I've got terrible distance vision. Up close, I'm okay, but it's got to be real close.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital at about 6, and my way of passing time, there was through art, and it was the early 90s, so it's not like video games were too
right.
fun for somebody with a struggling visual field as well. Or you'd have kids, shouting at me to get down because I'd be blocking the screen, right? But yeah, so I mean, the process of art has always just been, my way of passing time. And then, in school, again, I wasn't too active at reading the chalkboard and stuff, so I just spent my time buried in a notebook and doodling. But it progressed to, my career as a tattoo artist after high school, and just always been something that I've been, actively doing.
Yeah, I assume tattoos is something you kind of have to typically be up close and personal anyway when you're working on tattoos.
Yeah, but I've definitely established, barriers. Like I wear super heavy duty glasses for my work.
Yeah.
Everybody that I work with knows what my visual dexterity limitations are. So I make the decisions that are right for me and my clients as well.
Awesome. Now, are you still doing tattooing, or was that a previous chapter before you kind of dove into comics?
No, I mean, I tell everybody I'm working 3 full-time jobs right now. So
Yeah.
it's it's whenever I've got somebody booked for that, I do that. I do home renovations as well. And then when it's midnight, I hop onto podcasts with good guys like you.
It's always the folks that are over on the East Coast. It's always great that the people that do show up, because it's really hard to book guests that are over there
totally
so late. So
yeah,
we do.
But
you and not only that, but you're doing this while you're on vacation with your family.
That's it.
So.
Yeah, everybody's sleeping right now, so I was able to sneak out.
Yeah, it's awesome. I hope you're having fun out there. So, and then so I was kind of going through your Instagram and everything, and I really like some of the ways that you're marketing yourself, like your slogan and everything. And then I noticed you had like these glasses that are these perforated glasses that you were you were kind of allowing people sort of to kind of view the world
Yeah,
as you do.
it gets the
with your
gist, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's really cool. You know, I've always, when I was a kid, I would do accessibility seminars for my peers, and I would get like glasses that were more specifically tailored towards my prescription that they could kind of walk around and interact with. But you know, it's a little bit different than, you know, telling a 9-year-old to play basketball with some foggy goggles on, right? So I think by inviting people into the pinhole glasses kind of experience, you know, it brings them into the process, right? It's not impossible to draw the way that I see, but it is a little bit harder. You know, one of the anecdotes from the last art show that I debuted that whole thing with was a guy was like sitting there working away for like 15-20 minutes on his sketch, which was like a little bit longer than I intended for people to spend on their stuff. But I caught him one point. He had the glasses off. I was like, "Dude, what are you doing? You're cheating." And he's like, "Oh, it's really hard." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." and he's like, "It's kind of giving me a headache." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." I was like, "I wish I could take 15 minutes away from being blind, right?" And but it was good enough to like get the message to everybody that was watching and laughing, you know, at and with him. Yeah, I think it's just like, you know, it's something that I'm going to continue to do at cons and stuff, where whether it's I give a little sketchbook for people to play around with, or if I can do like a big mural and then at the end of it tie it all together or something. I just think it's really cool for the inclusive experience.
Yeah, and you just mentioned cons, and it sounded like you're getting start. Did you say you're getting ready to do your first con?
First one on Saturday.
Oh yeah, so is
tomorrow,
that sort of you brought the family down and you do a vacation while you're doing the con then, or?
No.
Oh.
This was all kind of smashed into the same week. So I'm getting home tomorrow, just in time to get to the printers to pick up my banner and stuff, and then Saturday morning I have to be I got to be, you know, an hour away from where I'm living for like 7 in the morning. So it's going to be a you know, pretty action packed weekend.
Yeah, it's good. I'm always curious if you can be successful promoting a Kickstarter at a con.
Well, I actually have physical copies with me too.
No,
I
I assume you're probably going to mention that you have a Kickstarter or whatever.
Oh, but it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah. Because I'm planning on doing next weekend. Hopefully, I haven't totally booked it yet, but I'm planning on doing a signing, and I'm just curious how many people will actually go to the Kickstarter, you know, when they're actually there in person and everything. So
yeah, I'm interested to see what like the market has to offer, because it's, again, my first con, and like, you know, I didn't dive to like Fan Expo or anything because, you know, I've got a lot of ground to cover to establish myself still. Yeah. You know, I'm going to incentivize, you know, participation with, you know, 8x10 prints and stuff like that, because I've got them all printed. So, you know, I kind of see once I've made the investment in anything that I've taken to the printers, it's kind of, you know, not a bargaining chip, but it's an incentive that I can offer people for their support anyways. Right. So, I mean, like, even if it's a $2 back, you know, it still adds to the number of people that want to participate in your campaign. I think that it all goes towards kind of showing that there's people that want to, you know, be a part of your story.
Yeah. Are you planning on printing up anything with a like a QR code or anything?
Yeah, I do. I have a few. I've got the QR code for the direct link to my website, or for the Kickstarter. But then I also got the OVU card or whatever, like the tap card that they advertise on Instagram.
And that.
It's pretty cool, man. It's like, you know, you just tap it, or like there's a QR code that's like just for you, and it brings you to a link tree basically. And I've got it linked to like interviews and, you know, all my social media and my website and all that stuff. So, so that's everywhere too. That's on my banner.
Cool.
Awesome.
I thought you were going to have a question. So the other thing, so you kind of partnered up with a friend of mine, Mark from Lesser Known Comics, to kind of distribute, because you're in Canada and you're using Lesser Known Comics, I guess you said, to distribute your comic in America.
Totally. And then, you know, similarly, like I want to be able to, you know, bring Lesser Known to, you know, a different market as well. So I've got, you know, like tiers that are like Doug's picks and stuff like that. So I want to be able to kind of, you know, get the books that I really like from him outwards as well. and just kind of really encourage the development and growth of positivity in the indie comics community.
Awesome. All right, well, let's sort of dive in, because one thing we always do on the Artcast is we allow the guests to kind of drive the conversation as far as pick the topic. And you wanted to talk about work ethics. So what made you decide to choose that? And then that will kind of take us where we need to go, I guess.
Well, I mean,
is it something you struggle with, or is it just something like you've mastered and you're like, oh, I got this awesome work ethic?
No, I think I really like seeing everybody's perspective on it, right? Like, you know, myself being somebody with exceptional needs that did a formal tattoo apprenticeship and like has kind of had to work through different levels of criticism and you know, I guess physical limitations and stuff. Like, you know, it takes something to be able to hold yourself to a schedule and to be able to execute, you know, efficiently. And you know, I guess like one of the things that I've observed is like, you know, maybe as I get older, youth seems a little different in how they feel about being, you know, constructively criticized, or you know, timelines that are laid out for some of the people that I know. So I guess it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, I'm interested to see what anybody else's perspective is for kind of, you know, how you hold yourself. Like, you know, when I started writing my book, I had obviously the dark time to contest with. So I had enough time to really hold myself to ridiculous timelines and stuff. So I was like, I for whatever reason, you know, challenged myself to write a book a month, right? Like,
okay.
it was like, you know, a little extreme, but, you know, I did the best that I could. And now I have a good framework for things that I can really polish up and redistribute. But yeah, I don't know. I guess like, I suppose it's just a matter of like, you know, is it grit or stupidity to like have a work ethic that like, you know, might be considered old fashioned or whatever, or is it unreasonable to take your concerns to somebody, you know, who like you, like, how do you do it? You know what I mean? Like, how do you tiptoe around, you know, a glass daisy, in a snowstorm, right? Like, there's this fragility that seems to come with some people where it's just like, they, it's not even that they're quick to offend. It's just like they're quick to like say, I'm done with this, you know, and they walk away from it because it's, you know, there's a fear of like positive conversation around room to grow, you know.
I know.
And it's
go ahead. No, I was just going to say, I'm sure Josh is champing at the bit to get into this conversation.
Yeah, I love it.
It's one of his favorite topics, I'm sure, because he's got an insane work ethic. I mean, he's working full-time job, and then he's got 3 comics going on, and he does. I mean, the one thing about you that maybe is a little more healthy than Josh is that we can see you're actually taking time to take a vacation, which I don't know if Josh has taken a vacation in the past. I don't know how many years.
It's a skill, man.
I think I relate a lot to that, like on multiple levels. I mean, first off, like I love that you're like, and I'm assuming like, so do your comics also, they do openly address your biography, but it kind of takes it and makes it like science fiction as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that it's great because I think that there's not enough discussion about like neurodiversity and diversity in general, like when it comes to like abilities and things like that. And honestly, I think any movement towards like more voices in comics is like a thing we should totally support. And I think it's cool that you're doing that. I'm a person, I try to write really openly about like mental health struggles and stuff like that. In comics as well, because I think like destigmatizing and having conversations about hard topics is really important in comics, and the medium's so perfect for it. But
I really want to circle back to that because it reminded me of something.
Circle back right now.
Okay, cool. When you're talking about your book that addresses like really challenging questions about faith and stuff like that, for me, like my first few books were like real heavy, like you know, like church punchers. So like I'm tweaking that, in that like I don't want it to be a reflection of characters, but more like a structure of society kind of thing. But the thing for me, like I remember being a little kid at like, you know, 7 years old, going through chemo, like retching on my parents' bedroom floor, And just thinking to myself, like, I went through Catholic school, and I just thought, like, well, if there's a heaven and hell, like, where does this fit in? And then to see other kids my age that sometimes they would be at camp for kids with cancer. The next, couple months, they're just like nobody would talk about them for whatever reason or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I think that like growing up in that kind of an environment, it very much shaped my secularized train of thought.
Yeah, understandable. And like, at that age to witness like the way that people kind of behave around any sort of like down topic, where they'll like either brush it off or they'll be prescriptive in their conversations, where they'll be like, oh, well, they're telling the person suffering, like, oh, well, think on the positive side,
Mhm,
or,
mhm, mhm.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
um, it's, that must have been a very difficult thing at that age to kind of deal with like people's sort of freak out reaction to just things that honestly it makes sense that people
yeah,
would be freaked out about, but still it's like you as a kid are having to face like stuff that adults have trouble
totally.
navigating.
Yeah,
So that just sounds like such a, like, as a creative, I'm like the type of person who, it sounds like we're similar, where if I had that in my past or in my arsenal, I would be using that for creative fuel because it's just so rife with like
yeah,
emotion, you
totally.
know?
Yeah, and you should be
um,
able to take like the seed and blow it up, right?
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's really cool. And also it just sounds like a fascinating story. So the second thing that I just think of is like the amount of work ethic with, like, all of us have to work hard to do art, and it takes like, a lot of dedication and stuff like that. But then what you've had to overcome in order to do art, it, so there's a few things I'd like you to kind of get into that a little bit, and like how much work ethic would mean for you, because I would imagine for you to do the same like amount of work as like a cartoonist who's dedicating themselves all the time, it's gonna, you're coming at it having to overcome this extra hurdle, which it just, to me, I wonder, in life having to overcome that kind of thing, has that built within you like a stronger work ethic than maybe like your peers? And then
well,
second off, I want to know, are you tired of talking about that as a conversation? Because I'm always curious, because I write about mental health, and sometimes it's a little heavy to talk about that every interview. So those are my two questions.
I guess everybody should just get their little violins ready. I've got mine packed in my bag here. Um, the I don't get tired of talking about it because I see it as an opportunity for empowering anybody that hasn't spoken about it or has always wondered about it.
I love it.
And I think that positive kind of attitude is again how you don't like how you don't become the painting gorilla, right? Which is like my tattoo thing, but we can talk about that after. The As far as the what I've had to accomplish to do what I do. I don't know, like I just believe that I've obviously like I've reached hurdles in my life where I have to I didn't go to college, so it kind of eliminated a lot of direct opportunities in illustration and publication and stuff off the hop for me. So as I kind of started circling around it, I realized that like I still got to pay bills. I still got to keep my kids a little chubby, and I still have to be able to bring them out to trips and stuff. So that for that reason, I'll work home renovation or tattooing or whatever, and you know it's um it's a little bit different because I've got a headache all the time, and I just got to look real close to the level when I'm putting a cabinet on a wall. Um, but um, as far as what it takes, I think that it's just like um, the standard that I hold myself to with what I create is kind of it's like a two-headed beast. Like it's what I see, but then it's under the assumption that someone who can see is going to look at it and dissect it for all the flaws without reading it as being or without dismissing it as just being like artistic creation. Like when you're a kid, you get so proud if somebody says, "Hey, you're a good artist," for a 12-year-old. you know, you get like so hyped because you're just like, oh man, must mean like I'm like the best 12-year-old that they've ever seen,
Yeah.
right? And then you know, as an artist or a creator with a physical limitation, you know, it's like, hey, you're a really good artist for a blind guy, you know, and it's like it's kind of like it's a thanks because I appreciate that like you see what I'm working with as a compliment, but like what I strive to do is like overcome that where people like you know stop and look at the art like that, damn, that's cool, and then they get like they hear the backstory and then they're just like invested because you know had they not known that it would have just been you know toe to toe with other great illustrators. And so that's kind of like the standard that I hold to myself. um, you know, but like as far as like work ethic, like when you're a father, a parent, or whatever, you know that that 15 minutes that you have to slap out a sketch is like the most crucial 15 minutes because otherwise it's going to be on your mind for the next 8 hours.
Yeah.
You know, so like so that's why digitally working is great because not only for accessibility tools can I you know zoom in and you know detail a pimple because it's 500 dpi at an 11 by 17 canvas or whatever, but like you know I can just open it up, whip out a concept, and then put it away. And there are people that like expect to see results quickly too. So the faster you can do it, the cleaner you can do it. You know, it's a tattoo thing. The quicker you can book them, the quicker you can continue to make money.
Yeah.
So you know, I think that just being like a self-driving machine and is the most important part, and then being a self-advocating, self-driving machine is the second most important part. Because if you can't speak up and say yes, I can, or no, I can't, or I can, but you know, you're never going to be able to put yourself in a position to be comfortable as well as you know successful.
That's so true. I think there's so much like wisdom there. I wonder, Doug, if like what you were referencing kind of at the top with work ethic, you were kind of mentioning that you've kind of stumbled upon people who, well, and I'm guessing this is kind of in the art world or whatever, who sort of fail to have like a strong work ethic. You've noticed, and you're kind of like, am I strange for having this? I don't think that's the case. I think that for people to make comics, in particular comics, it's just it's a different game. And I think there's a lot of people who like to play at the idea of it. And then once they actually bite off a little bit of comics and like what that actually entails, because it's an
Mm-hmm.
immense amount of work. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people like cop out, make excuses. They'll sort of make reasons, like everything under the sun will come up as like a reason why. Like they'll look at their peers and be like, oh well, they can do this because they have the magic thing,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and I'm just not that lucky or something. Instead of just kind of looking at it like there's this hurdle I need to overcome, of just like a gap of knowledge, like especially early cartoonists, you know, where it's like there's a
Mm-hmm.
gap of knowledge between what they have and I have, and the more I work, like the more I close that gap.
Yeah.
And I've definitely witnessed that too. um I guess that it's interesting because like I've had friends with like disabilities who, like, one of my first roommates, he had no hand. He
Mm-hmm.
was born with like a fetus hand, basically, like,
Wow.
and
Yep.
it never fully developed. And he would not listen to people who said he couldn't play guitar. And so he came up with like an invention that like it was like a strap that would attach to like a pick, like right here,
Yeah.
like a guitar pick. And he learned how to play guitar. And then he got
So
tired of
sick.
people. And much like what you were describing, he got tired of people saying like, oh, you're pretty good at guitar for somebody without a
Totally.
hand.
Yeah.
So he started playing like, so by the time I moved in with this guy, like we were roommates for like it was like my first roommate out of high school, and he could kick my ass on guitar. And like, like I had no excuse for being like, he's just an incredible guitarist. And
Mm-hmm.
then, you know, like, so, and what's weird is he actually works at the Magic Castle now doing one-handed magic, and he's a good
Sick.
enough magician to work at the Magic Castle. So it's like,
Good for him.
he's just one of those dudes who like would not listen to people who said he couldn't, and didn't listen to placation when, like, you know, when so everything you've just brought up just kind of really rings true to me. as just like honestly for anyone in comics, like I think that if you want to do this thing that we're all doing, it just requires a lot of dedication and work. And what you described about
Absolutely.
as a parent, like that window of time, you kind of have to look for those windows, because they fly by so quickly.
Yeah, totally. You
Yeah,
do
so
have to a lot for coffee sippage as well.
yeah, oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
I noticed they said lots of caffeine and B vitamins. Some person in the chats. So
Totally.
so for you, like, when did you start doing comics like very seriously? Like, when did you start committing to doing comics seriously?
October 2019 is when I started laying out my first issue of Chiasm. And then I kind of I rolled it over to doing 2 issues because I was like, I got to 24 pages and I was like, well, I can just keep going and have fun with it. And then I did like a very limited print run to see, if it kind of stroked the ego enough for me to like seeing my work, on the page. And once I saw that, I was like, that's really, it's fun. Like I really enjoyed it. Like it brought to me something where it's like the pressure of tattooing, and the rules of tattooing. I was able to like totally break free of it. And then I also realized that it gives me an opportunity to, again, extend my voice, not just from like 18 and older, one at a time for 8 hours a session and then never see them again. But to make this thing that whether it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes to flip through, but then gets across, goes across the world and or into every hospital or into every whatever, you know what I mean? Like the opportunity to diversify and grow my message and my brand is just so much bigger. So I got into a deep dive. One of my like biggest things though was like accessibility. So that brought me to digital. So I like started creating my content so I could release it on Comixology originally, because I love the guided view and to be able to like zoom into like the, like the background of a panel. And once I kind of got into the flow of that, I just kind of realized that like they switched over to KDP and I took it as my opportunity to like really double down and start bringing all that to print. So really seriously 2019, and then I've just kind of been gnawing away at it, every opportunity that I can get,
Awesome.
Weeknights, weekdays, all that.
Hey, Doug, you mentioned hospitals. So do you do things where you actually go, like, bring your comics to a hospital, maybe kids that are going through what you went through, going through cancer and things like that, and just as an inspiration to them? Or what did you mean when you talked about, like, do you like, because I'm always looking at interesting or different ways to sort of promote. I'm trying to be careful how I say that because I don't want to see it's like just you're promoting yourself because you're going to a hospital, but you can 2 things can be correct. You can be promoting yourself and you can be doing a service to people and helping.
Spreading empowerment too, right? Like positivity and empowerment. So it's on my list, my ever growing list. It's something that's like absolutely a dream of mine to be able to give back to, especially sick kids in Toronto. The chiasm is like, it's kind of one of those things where, because I deal with like body horror and what comes with, being invisible, person with an invisible disability kind of thing. I mean, unless you look at my eyes and you're like, wow, this guy, one's off with Saturn and the other one's looking down at Church and Gerard, right? A title that I'm working on that I want to gain momentum with through chiasm is called the Super Wicked White Cell Squadron. And that's like your love note to the Power Rangers, basically, right?
Oh, cool.
So it's like, yeah, exactly. It's just like, robots and kaijus and cool kids wearing, fun armor and, and it all rolls back to like my parents explained chemotherapy to me as the White Ranger going into my body to fight the monster trying to destroy my brain. So, it's a bit of like, it's a derivative story kind of thing, but you can do the same story every issue, always have it being fun. And then like, if it gets traction and grows, it's something that I won't mind outsourcing to other people who have lived like similar experiences that just want to be part of something really fun. Whereas, so once I'm able to like I've got that issue inked and I'm writing it currently. So like once I get something solid with that, then I'll be able to make more of a push to, you know, get myself established throughout the children's hospital networks. So that's what the plan is for that. So it's on the list.
Yeah. So is that what you meant when you mentioned hospital then? That that's just a goal that you're going for, or did I
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally.
No, I think that'd be perfect. And I mean, and I've heard of organizations that go out to like children's hospitals and stuff and distribute comics and things like that.
Yeah.
But and you know, I'm sure it's happened before. But to have a creator who has actual experience with that and you know, is a big part of who they are as a creative, I think that would really help inspire kids. And any way we can get kids to you know to tap into their creativity or actually with kids it's not necessarily tapping into creativity, because you'll find that kids are the most creative. Somewhere along the line they lose that creativity or gets beaten out of them.
You need to give them what I got, where it was just like seeing somebody else draw the biker mice from Mars really accurately and knowing that like that potential was within me. I just had to look a little closer and have a little more fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Sorry, just real quick, with all the organizations, well, I don't know how many organizations, but all the people that are like looking into like, or who do put comic books into hospitals and stuff, I'm happy to work with anybody. Like I believe that like, you know, I'm friendly enough to work anywhere I'm needed. But I also think that like, again, in the spirit of like independent, you know, publication and you know, the pursuit of spreading positivity, I'm also happy to just take a book into, you know, a PR department at a hospital and see what I can do with that hospital specifically. So
absolutely.
Absolutely. So go ahead, Josh.
I think that's great. That just kind of reminds me of like, there's this whole kind of movement that's been happening in the last like 5 or 6 years in comics of like graphic medicine is like a movement. And I think possibly like as you're promoting to kind of look into that angle of things as well, because what you're describing just like marries so well with that whole movement that might be something I'd consider looking into as well, Doug, because that's pretty exciting stuff.
I got approached by an app called Visling. And it's being produced by the Wichita State University and Florida State, I believe.
Nice.
And it's a haptic reading accessibility app. So what they're using Chiasm Zero as the first comic book on the platform, and what they've got is like a guided view where like as you scroll through the panels, like with your finger, if you go off panel, it'll give you like a little buzz to send you back on the story path, as well as stuff like a free explorer mode where like they've programmed every surface to have a label so you can touch it and it tells you what you're looking at, as well as voiceover for the speech and stuff. So I'm super excited to see that all come together.
Dude, that's amazing. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing to be able to kind of give back and contribute, and also like create awareness, you know, for again, like an issue that like honestly I don't think has been written about in comics before, or if it has, I'm completely unaware.
I mean, the X-Men was pretty close.
Yeah, X-Men is just like a story made for anyone who dealt with any sort of thing that was outside of the norm.
It's a mighty comfy blanket.
Yeah, it's an outcast's blanket, like in the best of ways.
Totally.
I think that's pretty exciting. So when like in 2019, when you first decided to like really tackle comics, were you surprised by like how much work it is? Like a lot of people when they first start, like was
not
it
really.
kind of a shock? No,
no, not really, man. Because it's like it's about workflow and efficacy as far as it all goes, right? Like I think that the crazy thing is that like there's so much more to learn. Like when I started making comics, I only knew Procreate, right? But then through necessity, I learned Photoshop, and then through another project that I just did with the city of Toronto, I had to teach myself Illustrator. And so, but like every time I do one of these things, I unlock all this other great stuff with the other things, right? And then it's like learning how to make the programs talk to each other, and then like being able to like hand draw something, scan it, have it at a good resolution that you can ink it properly. You know what I mean? Like there's all these things that like the bubble continues to grow and grow and grow. So that's my favorite part about it. As far as obstacles go, I think it's just like it's not everything is hard. Like everything is a level of difficulty in this
Yes.
life. Changing diapers sucks, but if you get good at it, you can do it in under 45 seconds, you know?
Yeah, I
But
always feel
like,
like that one was one where you're kind of cursed, where by the time you've mastered that skill, it's too
yeah,
late, and then
they're
by the
having
time it comes
conversations
back
with
again,
you.
it's too late. It's been too much of a gap, where you're like, oh
Totally.
man, yeah,
Yeah. But like penciling, like I love sketching. Like sketching is my natural language, right? Like, and so like I know how to pencil so that the dog poop that I put down on a page, I can ink over it real clean and have it be polished.
yeah,
And then kind of learning how to work a panel with your lettering and make it all be comfortable so that it doesn't seem like a cluster F of ideas that you just got to last minute. That all comes with time. My biggest obstacle was the dreaded wall of text. Like
yeah,
when I first started, like I'm all about like I love the Marvel method because it's my story, so I draw it and then I integrate the words as they fit. Um, and when I was doing that with the Jack Johnson font off of Procreate or whatever it's called, I go off on this like mad tangent of like fitting every single thought into one panel and then moving on to the next and then going back and being like, well, not even like somebody with 20 or 40/20 vision can read this crap because it's boring and it's too much and whatever. So I guess formatting my words and kind of learning like I took that formula and went back and started lettering everything so that if
nice,
I'm writing it at a comfortable size, hand lettering digitally, like I want to preface that by saying like I still don't have like those, the skills to do it like on paper, but I do, but like I don't do it often.
That
But like hand lettering in the sense that like I make sure that it's readable while I'm working on it, so that when it gets shrunk down to the operating size, it still looks good to the eye. So if that
nice,
means I have to simplify the story and spread it out over a couple more pages, then it just unlocks that opportunity for me because what the hell, I can still draw more panels, right? Like you can, you
yeah,
have that flexibility. So I don't know, man. Difficulty is hearing people say, I wish you could drive and saying, yeah, no poop, right? Um
yeah.
but I think that from creative perspective, like if you're open to just accepting the challenge and knowing that like you can be the person that makes it happen for yourself,
Yeah.
like that's what it's all about for me.
I
I, wa-
I I love that outlook. Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I just wanted to circle back real quick as far as the hand lettering digitally
Mm,
because I put out a whole like a product called the comic lettering toolkit kit, which is
mhm,
basically teaching you how it's got templates and things that you can follow, and it's for Procreate, but it's basically teaching you how to hand letter digitally. And I'm
mhm.
just curious how many people actually do that. You're the first person that I actually heard that is sort of doing that because typically if people are in a digital environment,
Mhm.
they're probably using fonts or whatever. But I think it's
Yeah.
cool that that you're actually not just using a font but hand lettering, but doing it digitally because
Mhm.
I think that's a way to. I mean, there's so many workarounds. Like I think this is what Josh does, but I don't know. But where you take the font and then you
Mhm.
just trace over it by hand, so
Mm.
you kind of use that as a guide, but it still looks like it's handwritten.
That's
So
cool.
yeah,
That's cool.
I'd like to see more people actually, you know, and I just did that because I think it's an easy way to learn how to hand letter if you've
Mhm.
got an iPad and everything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious how many people actually do that, and that was kind of interesting to me. So
Yeah, so I think one of the cool things, it's like the very first book that I did, I hand lettered, and like everybody complimented it for me for it. But like when I went and I looked at it, I was like, it looks like my at the time 4-year-old son did it. You know what I mean? Like because I'm my own biggest critic. But like the more that I do it, obviously the more of an identity my letters take on to my hand versus like how I want to express.
Mhm.
Um, the one of the crucial things that I think I can credit is that through tattooing, there's a letterer named BJ Betts, and this guy like he's a like the letterers society or whatever it is, like master letterers. He's got like that certification, and so he releases all these textbooks about like serif structure and like how everything goes the same way. So like there's a language of stacking
oh yeah,
lettering and stuff like that. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
once you have that kind of You know, someone says, I want the 10 crack commandments, but I want them to fit on my forearm that big. You know, you need to know how to manipulate and make it look not only really good, but really readable. So I think applying that to my lettering in my book, you know, again, it's progressing. I'm happier and happier with each project that I do.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the way that I approach it. And again, just like, you know, writing comfortably where I can see it, but still respecting the space in the panel so that it doesn't, you know, overwhelm the eye or make you yawn.
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm a big advocate for hand lettering, you know, because of the fact that I feel like a lot of the time when I read comics that have digital lettering, and by the way, this doesn't mean digital hand lettering I feel any different about. I'm just saying like the different approach, like when people use a font in a comic that's hand drawn and has like a hand drawn look to it, even if it's digitally created, there's like this distance between the font and the speech balloons and the art. And I feel like by doing it by hand, it kind of unifies everything and makes it feel like one unified whole. Whereas I feel like by just slapping on word bubbles and having, you know, like a font on there, it just feels disconnected. And so that's one of the reasons I started doing hand lettering myself, because it's just like I couldn't bridge that gap until I started doing hand lettering. And then once you use like the same approach and medium to your lettering that you're using to your art, it like suddenly feels like less like you just slapped on word bubbles, you know?
It becomes less arduous as well when you can transition the two things and make it the same art, as kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also it weirdly enough also just makes you plan your space better. Like
Totally.
yeah, that's really exciting that you do hand lettering. I also think that what you were describing about kind of like it is hard, but everything's hard. I think it's such an important thing to highlight, because again, like kind of circling back to the work ethic thing, I feel like people without a strong work ethic often will be like, this isn't fun, so I'm stopping. Or this has gotten hard, so I'm stopping. And I think like they're kind of missing out on that bigger fun and bigger joy of like actually overcoming an obstacle, like making a comic, which is a giant obstacle to overcome. And the second you do, you like level up. It's like a video game.
Yeah, well, it's like a couple of weeks ago, I was demoing a bathroom, right? And so I went home and I told my
by the
son,
way,
I was like,
demo's the funnest part of construction. The reverse is not.
yeah. I'll tell you this much: when you can demo something with nothing but like a good sharp knife blade and like the claw of a hammer, that's when you know you're there. But I told my son, I was like, you know, I chiseled up a tile floor today. He's like, that sounds boring. I said, dude, it was like really boring, but I still had fun. He said, how come? I said, because I was able to like, you know, come home, a couple bucks in my pocket, but now I can, you know, spend tomorrow working on my book because there's nothing for me to do, you know? So like, it's also about appreciating like obstacles when they're there as something that like you got to get through to afford the opportunity to do something fun, you know, a little bit later on.
Totally, dude. I mean, like, if art were easy, it wouldn't be artwork, you know. And then, like, the other thing is, and I've talked about this on here, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on it. But it's like, I remember a while ago reading an interview with Craig Thompson where he talked about making blankets, and at one point when he was making blankets, he had to like eat out of a trash can. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like he was homeless for a little bit when he was making the book, and he was working doing like production work for a comic company, and he was spending so much time on this book he didn't have time to like make any money to eat, so he had to like actually eat out of a trash can. It's like this weird story. Anyhow, so people were like, that's horrible, that's horrifying. And he's like, dude, I'm an artist. Like he was like, I was making a giant epic piece of art. What do you expect? And I remember reading that and feeling kind of guilty, because when I first started in comics, I think I had more of a shock at the fact that it was so much work. Whereas obviously, like I've stuck with it, and so it's like I've gotten used to the just part of the process that is inevitable to making these things if you want to make them. But I am still surprised. Like I keep bumping into a lot of people who will forget that we're making art. You know, like that these comics are art, and so like you look at the whole not that artists should be struggling or starving. We shouldn't. But the point being, if you look at the history of art, like there's a whole like hundreds and hundreds of years of just artists struggling to make this stuff. Like that's part of the thing. It's like I think sometimes people can kind of forget that we're artists, and that's part of the thing. So it's really inspiring to hear your kind of outlook on that, being so positive about it. I think, you know.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's striking while the opportunity is there, right? Like,
oh yeah.
You know, it's unfortunately there's so much incredible talent out there that just never gets highlighted, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that obviously, like, it's who you align yourself with. Like somebody asked me a few interviews back, you know, how I felt about like my partnership with Less Known Comics. It was actually my buddy Josh Jones from Epic Nerd or Epic Beard Cast. It was I said, like, it's all about the foundation. Like you align yourself with the people that best represent both you and how you represent them. And when you can have a good foundation and you can stack on top of each other, then it becomes something that's like, you know, solid and unbreakable. And you know, unfortunately, people, whether it's that they're introverted or that they just don't have the encouragement to, you know, form those relationships, you know, but because of Mark, I've been able to get onto these great interviews with you and so many other people. And you know, it's because somebody sees that I've got work ethic and a good attitude and they want to sing me from the rooftops. Well, in kind, I believe that like somebody like him who has such an incredible vision for, you know, hunting down great talent and promoting them to make comics and stuff, you know, is somebody that really deserves to be highlighted as an exceptional individual as well. So I think that like when you hear about people struggling, it like obviously you have to be empathetic to the fact that like, you know, they haven't had that like exposure, that moment yet.
Yeah.
But I also think that like, you know, you kind of have to shove your foot in a door now and then too, right?
I agree.
And especially like if you're a kid, if you have kids, I always go back to that because I have kids. So it's like, you know, if like I did a big art show a couple weeks ago, the day before my first day of that show, my toddler broke his arm, right? And so like I'm going through the doomsday scenarios, but like, you know, it's just like, well, I still had to go and do it, and I had to trust that my spouse was comfortable with me doing it. It was a big communication point. There's all this stuff, right? But you know, I think that when you circle all the way, like circle back to it, it's just a matter of like, it's really awful, but what are you going to do with the circumstance that you have now? Are you going to see it as the worst moment of your life? Or are you going to know that that moment is not going to persist longer than where you are, and that you're creating the opportunity for tomorrow to be better for you and the people around you?
100%. I think that like the thing that actually I have definitely seen, just being at this for a while, is in art in general, like you're going to have these times where you're like, it's almost like doing demo on a building, right? Where it's like, you're going to have times where you're just breaking that stuff and it hasn't fully broken from all the foundation joints or whatever. And so it's hell. It's that first part, right? But then you have this point where something cracks, and that's where like it starts giving way a lot easier, and you can make a lot of progress really quickly if you push at that point. And so that like I feel like a lot of art is just kind of like you're knocking on doors that aren't going to open for a long time, and maybe you try the window, and then if the window's closed, you try like the back way, and if the back way is closed, you try the window, whatever it is.
And if that doesn't work, you spray paint all over the wall. Something that they can't ignore.
Exactly. But like at some point, like something's gonna give, and you have to be ready, like especially as an artist, you know, like who is kind of working at it. When that starts giving way, you really need to like lean into it and kind of enjoy it, and build relationships and stuff. And I think that's really cool. what you were describing with Mark, because he is a guy who like I think is, I think Scott and I both are like really big fans of his. I know Scott works with with Mark, but it's like I really I enjoy his attitude. Like I remember at a comic convention seeing the way he was kind of treating his artists, and I was like, that's awesome. I mean, it's like it's a rare thing in comics to have somebody that invested in their artists, and I think that's really cool.
Totally.
But I also think like, I mean, that's part of the kind of work ethic too, is like you really have to be hungry, you have to be trying, but also like when those opportunities arise, see them for what they are, because I think quite often in industry, like people will get jaded after a while, or they'll just knock a few times and they'll be like, well, the door's closed, so whatever. Or they'll just get tired of knocking because they'll be like, this is a lot of work.
It's kind of what Scott was talking about when he was in your how to recruit a killer comic book team, right?
Yeah.
I was listening to that a couple like an hour or so ago, and just like you talking about, like you saw incredible talent. Some of them you would reach out to and they were available. Some of them they weren't. Some of them wouldn't get back to you. But like you continued to recruit to develop your project.
Yeah, and imagine like the ones that like imagine if you say no when that opportunity arises. I just think that's pretty cool.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So, what do you think? Like, if you were to give advice on work ethic, because I mean, you clearly have a pretty decent work ethic. What would be your advice for like a young cartoonist or whatever who's kind of, again, like dealing with maybe the first time they're like putting together something sequential and they're like, oh man, I love drawing characters. Now I've got to draw him from the side and from the back. And like, it's like the starting to dawn on them, like all the sequential challenges of the thing. Any advice for like those people who are kind of first hitting those first few comic pages?
My mind goes to that like David Goggins embrace the suck. But then I also kind of like flip it over to like embrace the fun, like somebody wants to see you draw something from a 3/4 at a weird angle. Do it, because if you're not good at it the first time, you're going to do it the second time. It's going to get better. I was taught draw. That was like the thing that was drilled into my head, where it's just like, you're good. You might think you're good, but you can be better by continuing to do it. And it all starts like drawing. If you're an illustrator, that's where it all starts. I'm building myself to the plateau where I want my artwork to pay the mortgage. And I understand that by doing that, I not only need to be really good at drawing everything in my or someone else's style, but I also need to be diverse to be able to, speak all the graphic design language and stuff. So I say, don't close any doors, like make the time to learn, whether it's on your terms, whether it's in school, whether it's through Udemy, or through, somebody that's already done it. Like, just keep yourself open to information and, keep moving your hand. Like it's where it all starts.
Hell yeah. I think that's all really good advice.
Yeah. We kind of talk about advice for people wanting to get into art. And I think when we first started off talking about work ethic, I think we sort of alluded to, sort of a generational thing. Was that correct? Were you kind of leading into that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I think as far as generations go, like the younger generation, they're kind of at this interesting point where they have pretty much every tool imaginable at their disposal. I mean, we do too. Everyone does now. Mm-hmm. But I mean, growing up with that, because obviously when you're younger, it's easier to digest and learn new things when you're younger. And I've seen so many young artists that just have this massive head start more than what we did, just because you can watch literally. I remember when I was coming up, it was like there's so many like trade secrets and these carefully guarded things that people didn't want to share, but now everyone shares everything.
Alan Moore has master classes.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, you can learn anything you want as long as you want to learn it. So the flip side of that is, I think people now, especially young generation growing up or coming up, it's a lot of just with social media and everything, it's a lot of instant gratification. And that doesn't serve you so well as far as learning comics. I think you can learn a lot faster with all the tools, but it does take time. And I think a lot of people coming up get frustrated because the amount of time it takes to learn new skills. To learn. I mean, they're so used to getting everything right away. It's like, I don't know if I want to, when you tell somebody, oh yeah, well, look at where just think how much better you're going to be 5 years from now. It's like 5 years. I don't want to wait that long. So it's like, it's interesting. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Doug?
I think it's a strong perspective. And I want to underscore the fact that I'm not writing everybody off as being, useless or lazy or anything like that. There's exceptional people everywhere, no matter what their age is.
Exactly.
Kind of one of the things that I always as a joke, I'll walk up to a new apprentice or something, and I'll be like, "Hey, could you do this even if you were blind?" And then I'll screw my eyes up and just get in their face or whatever, right? And it's a total joke to because they know me by reputation, but they don't know me by my attitude or whatever at that point. But I think that the people that look at you and be like, "You goddamn right, I could," that's what you want. And I think that it's a special thing that I'm not going to give it up to where they come from or what's happened to them before. Some people just have that, and I think that when especially as somebody with experience from that's older now, I think that when you recognize that in someone, whether they're 17, 18, 22, whatever, you have to be that's when they deserve the positivity and the firmness to give them some of your techniques so that you can see them supersede you before they get to your age. And that's my opinion on everything, if I'm drawing with my son who's 7, it's, "Hey dad, what do you think of this?" I'll tell him flat out, it's not as good as the one you did 3 weeks ago because you didn't take as much time on it, but I think that it's hearing that where it's not to say it's terrible, it's not, it's still fun to look at and it's cool, but it's amazing what you can do if you spend an extra 10 minutes on something, and so I think that again, just time and work ethic and it all builds. So I think that your perspective on that was really good place to build off of.
I love that. I love that because I feel like there is a tendency and this is just I'm gonna pick on the younger generation too, but it's I feel like there is a tendency, and this isn't for everyone of that generation, but there is a tendency. I hear this a lot. I'm an art director, so I deal with a lot of new artists and stuff like that, or hiring and all that fun stuff. And it's I do hear a lot somebody wanting to just kind of give up because it's hard or it's not fun. And I hear that a lot, with young cartoonists, with young designers, where they're just this isn't as fun. So I'm just not that into this or whatever. And it's that's those moments where it's that's the I don't know. Can you imagine a tattoo artist starting a tattoo and then being I'm kind of bored with this, so I'm not going to finish it. It's no, you gotta find what's fun about it because you're doing.
I think you need to know something about the tattoo industry is that not everybody is the same. So it's but no, I totally agree with you. And you hit that point too when you're working on a project where you're just I'm over this square inch of skin right now,
Yeah.
But you either go, some people go for a smoke break and they'll mentalize and they'll come back and they'll continue because it's what they're doing. And some people just really love doing it, whether it's monotonous or not. I think that
that's
sorry,
the thing
go ahead.
Well, no, I agree. It's I think it's the catch is whatever it takes to find the love in it. And if you're not loving it, to the extent where you really hate it, then just don't do it. Don't do the thing.
Yeah.
There's a million people who want to do it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've said it a few times too, where it's I remember having a conversation with a buddy of mine who mentored me, and I was just when did you stop crapping yourself before every tattoo? And he's honestly, dude, when it stopped being fun. And it's not that he was saying that it's not fun to tattoo because you get these opportunities to these great concepts that you design and stuff like that. But he was saying like when he realized that like he had all the tools because it was his job,
Yes.
and it's like, and so it's like this real bittersweet moment where it's like you do lose a little bit of joy when you get really good at something. But then you find joy in like expanding your ability to do it. I think that like one of the biggest issues I've had, kind of experiencing like the mid 20s and under kind of thing is like communication is like, when my wife and I were not married and I was tired of being angry all the time. I learned how to communicate. I read the books. I did the stuff where it's, let's talk about your feelings. Let's change my body language. Like there's this art form to speaking, as I'm also finding out by going on too long with my interviews. And, I think that like, if you can invite somebody who's young and willing to listen and willing to learn how to speak back to you into a conversation, you make them very strong at receiving criticism and developing a good work ethic. But I think there's also the attitude of, not to pull a hot button like word, but like a cancellation thing where it's just like, I'm done with this. You said the thing that I'm not happy with, and now I'm just going to turn it off. And I think that that's the part, because it's like, there's no way of like reaching through and saying like, I understand that you're done with this, but I would love to continue the conversation regardless of how hard it might be. Right. Because they're just like the light, like the switch is off, like they're out, and so it's like, there's so much wasted opportunity with like development and growth when people have that attitude going into, a conversation.
You know what? That's so well put and ties into art, because I think all interactions, including artistic interactions, are conflict. And the act of creating art is kind of a conflict with your page or with whatever, like it's a problem solving endeavor, like visual art, right? We're solving visual problems, and you're in dialogue with that problem the whole time. Like when you're writing a comic page, you're first in dialogue. Like it sounds like you use the Marvel method, so you're directly in dialogue with the page.
Totally. Yeah.
But if you're not in the Marvel method and you're pre-scripting, then you're in conflict with that blank page, and then you're in conflict with like what you've written and making it work with the story, and then you're in conflict with like how do you translate that to visual, and
if you're working with other people, it's under the expectation of like, am I doing it the way that they're happy to see it, even though they came to you for your style and trust, right? So it's and that's what I'm working on right now is getting together with like incredible writers and like starting to really translate their words, and then teaching myself a different way of creating comics, right?
Yep. I love it. And I think that like in order to do collaboration artistically, you need to be able to get in conflict with people, like healthy conflict, not not saying go around being a dick to people, but like, or
this conversation's over.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's like one of those things of like being able to kind of have a healthy exchange and back and forth, and like, and have a little backbone. Like, and I think, I agree with you on what you were saying. Like, I think that's really important. And that is something that you mentioned. And I think like maybe this can tie back into your story and your own biography, but it's like, there is something that, like, I think people who aren't like, like the typical person, like people who, like my son, for instance, is like autistic. Right. And the one thing I've learned through the journey of like kind of raising him with autism is that like no one is advocating for my kid if I don't. And so I have to advocate hardcore for him to get him what he needs. And I had to do that a lot, like when he was really little, when he couldn't advocate for himself.
What's his level of reliance?
So he's high functioning, which is cool.
Okay.
And like right now he's out of SPED, and like he's tested into like general ed and stuff and doing really great. But a lot of that's from the work and interactions we had early on.
Absolutely.
But the point being, like, what I think whenever you want something in life in general, you have to advocate for it. But I think the people who are the most in tune with that are people like, Doug, with your biography, you've had to advocate for yourself, like, and be your own advocate, I'd imagine, quite a lot in life. Like,
For sure, yeah. Yeah, I was. It was something that I was taught through. Like when I was 7 or 8 years old, I had to do mobility orientation, and that's where I had someone from the CNIB working through the school board would come and they would teach me how to walk and navigate city streets. And I did that as a supplementary course all through high school, where I learned how to take public transit, and it's not silly, but like when you realize that like for me, because I have issue with contrast, crossing the street for me is like it's my biggest point of anxiety. And for
Yeah.
as funny as it is, like the older that I get, the worse of like the more of a fear it becomes, because I just think to myself like all it takes is one dickhead to race me, to take me out, to sacrifice my family. Like it's all this stuff that like that's my doomsday scenario. It's crossing a street improperly. But I learned how to listen for the surge and how to pay attention to what street signs I do have available to myself. And so it's like you have to know these things. It's the simple as like going to a grocery store, and the cashier jabs their finger at the screen to tell you what the total is, and you have to have the kind of the wherewithal to say I can't see, and then they for whatever reason think that jabbing their finger at the screen is going to enlarge the font for you, and then you have to re-emphasize that no, I'm legally blind, I can't see. you know so it's like sometimes it's a little not humiliating, but like you really do feel like you're bearing yourself to the world, where it's like the five people behind you didn't need to hear that you can't see as well as they do, but you had to say it to get that point across. So I think that's where talking about it becomes
Yeah.
like that thing that you're overly sensitive to, but it's so necessary, because in the moments where I tell somebody jabbing your finger doesn't change the fact that I can't see for damn, is their teaching moment where they're like, oh snap, maybe I embarrass this person by having them have to yell to the rest of the store that they can't see, you know. And so I think that like it's all that, like if you don't say anything, then they'll never learn either. And some people are never going to learn because they're dumb, but but you can't fix stupid. You can just spread a little bit of you know knowledge around there and hope that something takes root.
I love it. Are we, I think we're getting close to our hour and a half, and I know you're on the East Coast, so I know it's pretty late for you. Is there anything that you wanted to pinpoint or bring back around or leave us with that we didn't cover that you want? I mean, obviously, we'll give you a chance to promote the Kickstarter one more time, but aside from that, anything that you wanted to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet, or anything that you want to put a bow on?
I mean, I've had so much fun tonight. I think that, or I guess this morning, I think I'm just such an art first individual, right? And so, like, my intention for creating everything that I do is, just to make really cool imagery, and hopefully it touches like one person in a way that, they just feel like I got it, and I can draw somebody into my experience through that. And so that's it. I'm in it for the long haul. I think that as we were kind of talking about, like people see it as being difficult or whatever, but I'm just really excited to see kind of what this stepping stone of my comic book journey is able to unlock, so that I can move forward and get myself onto the pages of being known for more than that. I want to be the blind guy that draws Daredevil one day.
Oh,
The only way to get that narrative started is by spreading the seeds, and again, like just determining to people that your work ethic is second to none, and that your talent can back it up.
Dude.
yeah, I love it. So you when you sent me the images, the one I used for the thumbnail, I don't know if you saw the thumbnail, but it looked like you
It's
sent
a
me
little bit of sensitive territory, buddy.
What's that?
You don't know if I saw the thumbnail?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes
No,
people
I'm just messing with you.
That's
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah.
But so it was hard for me to tell what that was, because it looked like it was painted on a physical item. What was that painted on?
Now I got to look for the thumbnail. What was it?
It was, well, there was a bunch of them. It was kind of it was kind of like a sort of that three-toned, like the yellow, the blue, and the purple. And there were a number of them, but it looked like it was on like stone, or like a park. It looked like it was on a street.
Oh yeah.
Sidewalk, or
yeah. So that was the city project that I had to teach myself Illustrator for. It was it's called Street Art Toronto, and it's about or start Street Art Toronto. It's about like accessibility through the arts across the city of Toronto. And so I had to design vinyl wrap bike barriers. And so so I got my template, and then I learned how to draw with all the vectors and stuff on Illustrator. And then I had to like, so it was this whole thing where it's like I learned how to stress my MacBook to the extreme, as well as you know,
It's
not
great,
do
and
that on the next ones.
And I know it looked like there was some braille on there too.
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite things is kind of speaking in an invisible language, right?
Yeah.
I worked braille into chiasm as like swear words spoken amongst the aliens. And it's just like really funny, right? Because it's like this, I've got braille tattooed on my arm, and people are always like, "Can I feel it?" It's like, you can try, but there's nothing there, you know. Like,
Not unless you are Daredevil.
exactly. And so I really love the idea of like, you know, I can speak this language that I learned how to read and write, but I can do it visually. You know, I think it kind of adds to the mystique of you know, one of my characteristics.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was those were wraps, because it definitely doesn't look like Illustrator. It looked hand drawn. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, I hand drew it. I turned smoothing off because I didn't want to, you know,
right.
I wanted to have that signal or the whatever signature. But
Did you-
yeah, and that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask. Did you use the curves and everything to draw everything? Like
No, I just I took or I turned pressure sensitivity on, and then I set my my radius to 5 or whatever. So like with the vector pen, I had like a really good like
Nice thick to thin.
pressure curve. Yeah, and then I
brush?
just did it. Yeah, you got it. And then
Yeah.
and I just did it like so.
Okay, cool. Center. All right. Well, Josh, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you can start closing us out.
Well, I think it was an inspiring talk, and like I think your work looks awesome, and I'm excited to kind of see like the Kickstarter get funded. So if you guys haven't funded Doug's Kickstarter yet, you guys should. And
I'll be back in it after the show, and I know you got one backer because Gary said he backed it. So
hey, thanks, Gary.
Hopefully on the replay we'll get a lot more views and people will be able to see this on the replay. And
awesome.
Stuff, so.
Yeah.
So excited.
But yeah, like I really appreciate the conversation, and I think that's a really cool thing. And I think that it's important for people like out there to kind of back new voices in comics, as well as like back something that might be like a new topic in comics. I mean, like the thing I'm always advocating on this show is like, to me, the ideal future for a bookstore is one where every genre has a comic book, right? Like that's where comics should be heading, is where we have
it's where Sam the Record Man was, or like, you know, HMV and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Or like, thinking about it like a record shop too. It's like you want all the genres. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we had like a full just every genre in comics? So I'm excited about this. And Doug, like, thank you for coming on. So we're gonna wrap up. So I will let people know where to find me. I'll hand it to you, Doug, and then Scott's got to close this out because he's got to tell people how to do the mailing list and stuff. So you guys are on my channel. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications where we're about to go live, and consider picking up Jacob's Apartment. It's a comic that if you took Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind and Ghost World and put them in a blender where dreams and reality start interweaving, it deals with like heavy topics of like finding identity and dealing with challenges to faith. Then consider picking up Jacob's Apartment, but only do that after you back Doug's comic. So, but also you can ask your local bookstore or library to carry this. Doug, where can everybody find you and support your Kickstarter? There's a link to the Kickstarter directly below in the show notes too. So when you're hearing about this, feel free to click that link too.
Instagram. I'm current with my Instagram. I didn't get in on Twitter because obviously reading with the vision thing is a little tedious when I'm in a hurry. So I'm working on that though. I got Mark pushing me. Instagram and the Kickstarter, man. That's all I can kind of really push to it, because it's I keep everybody current through there, and it's real simple for my workflow. Yeah, but Jacob's Apartment. Sorry, man.
No,
James Apartment.
it's a play on Jacob's Ladder. So
okay, that sounds sick. I love it too. So if you don't end up backing me, pick that up because it sounds like an incredible book also.
All right, so that's awesome. I can't wait to check out Chasm. It's going to be really cool. Or Chiasm. My goodness,
Chiasm, you got it.
Chasm.
That's okay.
That's a whole different.
I'll say this more than I talk about my disability. It's a name designed to make conflict. You know, I want to hear as many people arguing about how you pronounce it as they walk past me at an artist table than anything else. So
you know what you should do is just correct it to different pronunciations each time. So if somebody says like chiasm, be like it's chiasm. And then
I actually did a pronunciation search on it through Google just to make sure, like, well, what does that mean exactly? So it sounds.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so Scott, this is a crazy channel and it bounces all over the place. Before you tell people how they can keep track of that, where can people follow your work? And obviously they want to be following your work because of an impending upcoming Kickstarter that we're going to talk about next week.
Yeah, and definitely, you know, first, like I said, back Chiasm on Kickstarter first, but next week I will be on there, and if you want to join my, if you're not already on, we'll be letting everyone know. There's also a pre-launch link. I think if you just go to youngandthedead.com, it should take you there, and then you can click follow, and it'll let you know as soon as it goes live, because there'll be some special, you know, limited edition items that you want to jump on those quick. So, but that'll be next week. And so, yeah, definitely check that out. You can join my mailing list. If you join the mailing list, you get the Comic Maker Starter Kit, which is absolutely free. It's got a bunch of cool digital tools and things that'll, you know, aid you in creating your comics. So check that out. That's on my website at circworks.com. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, Circworks on YouTube. And like alluded to, this show, The Artist, we do the show every single week, typically on a Thursday, typically about 9 p.m. Pacific time. And but it can get a little confusing because we can tell you the time and the day and everything. However, sometimes that's not always the case, but even if it is, it's not always on the same channel. Sometimes it's on Josh's channel, sometimes it's on my channel. Hopefully when Corey gets back into the regular thing, it'll start being on his channel again. So it can get a little confusing. I mean, we had some confusion today, partially me, because we both uploaded. We couldn't figure out who was going to be hosting, so we both up at the same time. But if you want, just join our mailing list for the Artcasters. There's a link in the description of this video, and we will send out, usually about 30 minutes before we go live, there'll be a link, so you'll know exactly who, you know, who's the guest, what the topic is, and whose channel it's going to be on. That's the easiest way to do it. So join that mailing list if you already have it.
All right, and before we close out, I'm just going to quote Sir Topham Hatt one more time. You have caused confusion and delay, Scott. All right, back Doug's thing, and we'll see you guys on next week's show.
Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah.